All right, welcome everybody back once again to the PCS Spring Split 2022. We got one more game to go. Well, that's actually a lie because technically there's going to be at least a tiebreaker, and actually at this point, guaranteed one tiebreaker as of tomorrow. But this one does allow us to tell which one it's going to be, and I'll get into that in a minute. Before I do want to thank our wonderful sponsors, CTBC Bank and Caliber. Thank you for making the PCS possible. Now, Clement, for Frank Esports and CFO, both of these teams have a very simple goal for their respective brackets. Seeding, aspirations. If Frank Esports win, they get a chance to contest for 6th place up against MFT, who just won their last bout. But if CFO win, they get a chance to contest with for third with Deep Cross Gaming and have a little bit of an intra-J team battle there. So this game means a lot to both of those teams.
Definitely, if CFO win here, that means that they will be playing Meta Falcon team in the bracket later on. And if Frank Esports win, I feel like both of these opponents are pretty tough, depending on DCG or CFO. It's kind of a toss-up. But for CFO, I think there's actually a bit of a drop-off between Frank and the rest of the teams. I would definitely consider MFT to be a much easier opponent from their vantage point. So Frank have a lot riding on their plate here. I feel like this is a team that, they had a lot of struggles, but we've also seen some glimpses, some strong performances from them, especially when Kurt actually gets a winning lane. They look like a completely different team.
It's a massive difference, and it's allowed them to do things like, net a win over DCG earlier this week. I think Holo's also finally found a bit of a groove. I was really criticizing him a lot this split. Because he just hadn't been extremely effective compared to his time on Boom Esports last summer. He's definitely improved. I think there's still some throwing issues. I think Pretenders had some problems, but we'll see if they can clean things up for today against the likes of CTBC, Flying Oyster, They Are Rest, Gemini Mission, Shun, and of course down there in the bottom side, Koala. So Shun's kind of been the guy, and I think this has made CFO honestly look better because he does more of what they need in the early game, which is kind of lane dominance.
I would actually say the team fights are where it really looks super different. Before, I feel like CFO didn't really have a center of gravity when they were playing the 5v5s, but now since Shun has joined, they can very reliably count on him to dish out damage. He is more of your hyper carry, much more than I would say Alan is. Alan, surprisingly enough, this split had a very good laning phase. But for Shun, I feel like he gives a lot more oomph in terms of the 5v5. His positioning, his daringness, I think are still a cut above Alan, and I really think this is the player for the future for CFO. The big problem that has been holding CTBC back and why their games have looked very dicey in the last couple of weeks has just been that composition issue. They don't seem to have a very clear picture of what they want to do with Rest. A lot of times, if Rest is something like a Jace or a Graves, and if they don't play around him, then it kind of feels like they have no 5v5 identity. So CFO, that is the most important thing for them, and a lot of it does come down to the mid lane as well. I feel like Mission has actually been improving on his Galio over the last 2 weeks. His first couple of tries were kind of disastrous, but in the past few games, I feel like his Galio has been picking up a notch here, and that has allowed them to play a lot more different compositions. They can go with the Camille Galio composition. They can go with a little bit more roaming and more dynamic comps to go into the bot lane as well.
Yeah, and I think for Pretender, it's been a little bit 50-50, a little up and down. I really like when we get to see him on Vex. I think it's kind of unfortunate to look at the Vex win rate because he has some really incredible games on this champion, and then they just sort of throw a little bit at the end. But yeah, both these teams are going to rely quite a lot on their mid laners. We'll see in Picks and Ban what comes up. The Syndra removed makes a lot of sense. It has been one of Mission's most successful champions, and the Gwen off the board against Rest. Also, Hecarim banned away from Holo, and the Zeri, which is pretty much stock standard.
Yep, we expect that to come through all the time. For Frank Esports, they still very much are a top lane utility focused and have your bot lane as your major carry in the 5v5 scenarios. So I think for Frank Esports, the most important thing for them is probably limiting the champion picks out of rest. He is going to get a counter pick out here, but we have seen if Frank fall too far behind on Kurt's side, there's just no coming back. And for Kurt, like everyone knows this, he's kind of the weak point on the team right now. He hasn't had great performances on split pushing, so he has to just blind pick utility in most scenarios. And I feel like for Frank, they have to throw a lot of bans into the top lane to just make sure that he can still stay relevant throughout this. For CFO, yeah. I would be very comfortable for them to just go with the Xayah in this situation. We've seen Shun pick the champion multiple times. It does have a good laning phase against the Jinx. You don't want to wait until second rotation, so they are going to do that. Now, they also ban out the Gnar, which I think is really smart.
Yeah. For Gemini, he gets his hands on Lee Sin for the 9th time this split. He's been able to play it for half of his games. But Holo's going to go for a bit more damage here on this Viego. He has had some mixed success with it. We'll see what the answer is. Pretender, are you going to give us a assassin play? I mean, well, the Ahri, we've seen that before, so that's coming into play as well. And that is a fair amount of damage and a lot of reset potential coming in the Frank Esports side. Could be makings of, I don't know, maybe a pick composition for Mission. Going to try to play it back, play it a little safe. We've seen a Victor game from him before. With a number of bans thrown his way, I wouldn't be too surprised to see it come in, and it is.
Yep, this is the big standard coming in from Mission here. We did see them have a very good game earlier against PSG. That was kind of the comeback hail of CFO in the second split so far. And what we have from the both sides is CFO, they are playing for a lot of zone control, but they don't have the range just yet. So I would expect them to go for the Jace in the top lane. I feel like that is kind of the most obvious pick right here. You have the poke comp in. You force Frank Esports to actually run into the gravity field and the blade collar to slow things down. And for Frank Esports, you know, Renata's an interesting ban.
Okay. I mean, Koala's got a game on it, but I think you were correct in thinking they should be focusing on rest. Maybe the plan of action is, all right, well, Rest will at least get something that he can be at least somewhat comfortable on, even if it's not Gnar. I don't know. We'll see if the bans continue to be focused towards the bottom side. No, it's a Tryndamere ban out. Interesting. On the CFO side. And for Frank, there's the Jace ban.
Yeah, the Jace is definitely the most obvious ban out of any of the champions that Rest plays here. He can probably still go for the Gangplank. It has a bit of the same effect, but obviously Jace is a little bit more consistent with his range in that regard. So now CFO, they should be going for a top lane and a support here. Rakan,
all right,
surprisingly,
all right,
still
Kurt.
open.
Kurt, now is your time. Go Darius.
I don't think he plays Darius.
I don't think so either. I mean, Camille isn't terrible. I think it fits this comp really well because it does give them a lot of chase down, and he doesn't have to rely on winning the lane. So I don't believe he's actually had a Camille game in this split, so this would be a first for Kurt.
Yeah, but it is a champion that has been around a lot, so I do expect Kurt to at least have some solo queue game experience on this one. And for Frank Esports, they just need a big engaged support, and I think they're pretty much set and done here. Very good composition across the board. Most likely still going. Yep, exactly. I think Nautilus, Leona's fine as well. A little bit more catch potential, and a little bit stronger in lane if the Rakan does go through. And for CFO, this is a weird comp. I don't like this composition from CFO whatsoever. It has a lot of potential when enemies are trying to kite into you, but I think for Frank, their strikes are going to be so fast that I don't think the counter engage actually matters. For most of the part, Frank Esports should be doing silence catches, and if I'm just looking down the draft right here, I actually feel like Frank won.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think they have a very clear win condition. They have power picks in the hands of the players that can execute them. And they have a lot of utility on low cooldown, right? For CFO, I feel like they're going to rely pretty heavily on Shun and Koala winning lane. And if not, Mission kind of has to be the one to hard carry it. You know, I think you talked about how this team doesn't always know what they want to do with Rest. I think we got a very clear example in this pick ban.
Yeah, the Graves will have some push against Camille, but post level 6, he's just kind of a sitting duck. That's why I have not been a huge fan of Graves in most situations. I feel like Graves is better used as a flex pick, or when you already see the tank coming out on the other side, so you can go Hullbreaker into it. This Graves it's very awkward. It's neither there nor here. Like if you think about the situation that CFO are going to be facing on the map, it's going to be a super fast dive in with Camille and just to follow up with everyone there. Leona also has that sort of split-second engage that you want from a pick composition. And if you think about the tools on the side of CFO, they're relying on things like gravity fields to be set down, for people to be walking over to join the rest of the map here. So CFO, I feel like they have forced themselves into playing 5v5 throughout the majority of the time. They cannot split up whatsoever, and what that means is basically Rest has to stay ahead of Camille all of the time. Camille, if she gets ahead, if Kurt somehow finds a lead in this lane, it's split push into pick, into pick, into pick.
Well, Kurt has been one of the weak links in the Frank chain, but he has been showing up in recent weeks, and now he has a champion that can enable him to hook shot into a lead. We'll see if he's going to be able to pull it off against the likes of CFO. Remember the stakes on the line here. Both these teams vying for a better playoff pole position, as Frank Esports can hope to get a 6th place seed and keep themselves out of the lower bracket to start. On the CFO side, they can go as high as 3. And if they win this one, they force a tiebreaker against the other J team, the other non-named J team, Deep Cross Gaming. But Deep Cross is going to be Frank fans this game for sure.
Obviously, everyone wants to be at least the second best J team now that the original J team has come out and locked in their slot.
They claim the title.
I guess I'm not too surprised.
What a saga!
Yeah,
what a saga it's been this split. I mean, we've really had quite a rotation. Like looking back on this split, as this is the last game of the regular season, we will have a tiebreaker one way or the other. Like it is incredible to think like where we all started. Like PSG opened the split with a loss. We wondered is the era of dominance over? Is it no longer going to happen without Maple and River? These new squads, Deep Cross showing up, deleting J Team in game 1, showing off the swag with all of their the dog tags of when they were on the J Team roster. CFO finding a dominating streak in the early part of the split, and Atlan showing up, and all these other teams really finding their place. But things have settled into an interesting pattern. It's not entirely familiar. There's a lot more competition up at the top, but at the very tippity top, it is PSG Talent again. So it's certainly been a spring split to remember.
I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. This split has just been so weird because I feel like the lessons that each team is teaching us is so different. Like for CFO, the clear lesson was laning strength just isn't enough to rely on solely. At the start of the split, when most of the rest of the field hasn't gelled together as a 5v5 team, CFO was hands down just the best squad over because they had the most notable raw talent. But as the split went on and most of the teams found their identity, knew where to improve, CFO steadily fell behind. We just didn't see a very strong understanding of what their compositions were supposed to do. They didn't react to enemy comps well, and they often fell into the trap of relying too much on laning phase and not having enough teamfight prowess to get them through the games. I feel like CFO, even at the end of the split, they didn't really come back from this fault. I feel like this draft is a little bit of a head scratcher, and especially from the top lane position. And, the best wins that CFO has still managed to pull off, especially against PSG, has just been lane dominant. So I'm not sure CFO have actually, picked up the right lessons here or what their playoff run will look like, but they definitely need to showcase more of an understanding of a 5v5 grouping together. Koala needs to step up for sure. Rest needs to have a more stable identity on what he's doing on this team. That being said, though, they still are the heavy favorites going up against Kurt and Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt and Frank. There we go. There's our nickname for the squad. Frank Esports have they've had a very interesting story as well because we look back to the beginning of the split, and this was a team that got put together at the last minute. They got Pretender, previously known as Kana, over from the PSG bench to give him some experience. He has definitely been a highlight of this team as he goes in and gets a bit of a trade on, already a little bit low against Mission. But this team has taken a while to find their identity as well because they didn't have a lot of time together, and I think they finally found it, right? I mean, Eminem and Pretender certainly are the big carries. Holo, in this game, he possibly going to be rolling off as well, but he's been a little bit more of an engager. Kurt's been more utility. K2 has kind of been there to do a little bit of everything, and Frank have managed to honestly scrape together a very respectable record, as that's a nice charm combo. Mission going to be zoned out of lane there.
Yep.
Maybe not quite.
Throughout all of those trades, it was consistently Mission that was chugging more potions. So even though the HP bars might look like Pretender was behind, Mission actually was losing out a little bit on the sustained field. And that is going to be pretty massive here, as Pretender will get that level 6 roam. Victor can't really follow the Ahri around the map. So there's potential for playmaking there, especially in the bottom side. That's where I would see a potential for Frank Esports to really throw all of their marbles.
There's Gemini on the level 3 gank. No ward coverage. We'll see how safe they can play this. It's going to be a bit of a wraparound. Actually, might just be going for a bit of counter jungling. Well, we'll see. K2 should spot this out on the Krugs, and the game is up.
I don't really see a dive potential incoming right here, so just should be some counter jungle like you mentioned, and some tower taking. Eminem already hitting level 3 makes that dive pretty much nigh impossible at this point.
Yeah.
So they're just going to back
mid.
off.
Let's see if Pretender can bait this one out. Not going to be the easiest.
The wave is pushing
Diego on
towards him.
4. Ooh, if they landed the charm, that's a difference. Now Gemini and Koala coming up to mid lane. Things flying quickly, and Pretender is going to back away. They do get the stun into a combo, but they stayed a little bit longer than they should have. Forces the flash out, and Holo says, whew, that was close.
Yeah, big win right here, and Gemini is going to catch Holo out again. Gets the drop.
Oh dear. He did not expect that one. The Ruined King getting a little ruined on that. Now, meanwhile, Kurt going in onto rest at level 6 for the engage trade, but he runs out of steam pretty quickly. I think he might have miscalculated on that. Let's see if he can keep this going. No, into the minion wave tack sweep. And that's going to be the end of it. Kurt, got to be careful there, buddy.
Yeah, he didn't really have the tactical sweep prepared right there. And Rest, even though he takes a stun to the face, he's so far behind his own minion line, he actually gets a lot of trading power from those ranged minions there as well. And he's also able to kite away through most of the auto attacks just with the fleet footwork. So unfortunately, even though Kurt started that trade, he actually ends up a lot worse for it. Before that, he was almost even on CS, but afterwards, you can tell he's getting pushed back complete to his own tower.
Oh yeah, Kurt stays in lane here to try and finish off the minion wave, but not having a great time. Rest should be the one to hit level 6 there, so he can breathe a sigh of relief that this lane's not going too shabby for him. Check in with the state of the rest of it. Gold leads for CFO, as expected. Tender, a little bit of damage taken there, and Holo wrapping around. There's the Harrowed Path, and into the stun, the combo. He's got no mana and forced to flash away.
Wow, what a great find through the minion wave right there. Able to tag Mission out with the stun, with the Spectral Maw. But Pretender's getting really low.
Okay, they split, but that's the stun, the flash, the follow. Gemini secures himself first blood, was looking for more. Frank, they stayed a little too long, a little too greedy.
And Kurt did not manage to finish his TP right here. He actually gets stopped by Rest, so again, Rest, this is going to be a massive win and most likely going to result into a turret plate, as Kurt does have to walk back, or at least Holo will have to help him reset here.
Yeah, Rest is doing a great job at just keeping this one in line. Kurt going to be backing now, but he's going to be losing a lot of plates on the tower. So that's a big ups here as CFO. You know, their strategy, lane dominance, well, it's working. It's at least working up there, and it looks like they're ahead in the bot too.
It always feels bad to kind of lose lane this hard to small tricks by the enemy opponent. That was just kind of a smoke screen into a delayed back, and he gets a free turret plating. Oh, it doesn't get the turret plating, but it gets very close to it off of that. And I do want to remind everyone that top lane, in my eyes, is the most important lane for CFO to work. If Graves doesn't push, he really doesn't contribute that much to the rest of the entire team. And it also allows Camille to roam across the map and create picks if he doesn't win the lane. So Rest has to stay on top of this 24/7. I do expect Gemini to actually shadow this lane quite frequently whenever it's pushing out.
For the time being, he's shadowing on the mid and looking for another opening, but Pretender, let's see if he takes the bait. Wow. No, the long range Q does result in a point-blank charms. Pretender zones away. He's forced to use an ult charge to make it happen, though, and Holo finally on level 6 has access to the Heartbreaker.
Channeling.
Looking for Gemini himself. Oh, he misses, tries to predict out on the Spectral Maw, and Gemini just holds the line.
A pretty cool move by Holo. He charges a Spectral Maw before he even gets vision of Gemini, and here we go again.
Hey. That's going to be the 3v3 right now into the Chaos Storm, but Pretender opens up hostilities as they manage to take down 2, and it's Pretender that picks up all the gold. Nice collapse there from Frank Esports.
Great stuff coming in from K2. CFO were shoving in the minion wave in the bottom side, but their mistake was assuming that K2 would be their bot lane as well. He didn't need to be there. He was already roaming top lane. And CFO, after chunking out Holo, just got a little bit too complacent. Pretender, also, you have to remember this, can leave lane, and Mission cannot follow. He cannot go and face check against a Charm. So, Frank Esports win out huge on the skirmish right here, and that is going to be very detrimental, as a fed Ahri going towards the top lane could mean that Rest just can't push as hard anymore.
Yeah, Pretender has definitely been one of the better players when he gets his hands on this type of champion. Really love to see his development as a player, and it's going to be trouble for CFO. Even though Kurt has been struggling a little bit in this top side, Olo's going to be coming here for some relief. That is going to be a control ward, spotting it out, so he'll stay safe. But I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a Pretender roam up top. Meanwhile, though, Eminem has got to contend with the push from Shun and Koala that has been pretty relentless, and it's going to finally result in a turret plate.
Yeah, this is what we expect out of the Xayah versus Jinx matchup. You get the serrated Dirk power spike right there, do a lot more damage. You also start building in the tier so you can constantly just throw out your Qs. It's been very powerful of a build here, and you know, I've been really surprised, but Xayah has actually taken over in priority compared to something like Aphelios, which has been a mainstay in the meta for such a long time.
And hey, you know what? Shun's played 4 games now of Xayah. 0 games of Aphelios.
Yeah.
Guess how many Aphelios games Atlan has?
7, I think.
Yes, you are correct. Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, he does play a lot of Aphelios. I think that's the main issue with Atlan, is that he's not great on the Jinx necessarily.
Ooh, okay. All right, that's going to be the smite down. And can they get him out there? Gemini going to get locked up in the Hextech Ultimatum. So Kurt's utility comes up huge
Tender
as Holo claims the kill. Oh, no, and Rest is going to give away the double kill here. Ooh, what a massive turn for Frank. They may have given up the Herald, but they do get Holo a double kill.
Yeah, and that's absolutely massive here because there are a lot of assists going over to Kurt. He didn't die there. Rest gives up his life, loses his flash, and now the top side is squarely in Frank Esports' favor. That just means no more pushing for you, Rest, and we get to decide when these fights happen. So we're going to watch this again. It was a good move by Gemini, but unfortunately you just can't get away from Camille. There's nothing you can do in this situation. Rest, I think, overstays his welcome. He still had collateral damage. He wanted to put a little bit more onto Gemini's attackers. He should have just let Gemini die.
Yeah, I think he should have. He also, it looks like he was on the wrong side of the blast cone too, but he was already nailed by the charm. Backtimers do mean that CFO can start off on this first dragon. A bit of a late start. We've got a lot of spicy dragons this game, or this day of play, I should say. It looks like Cloud Rift isn't going to be on the table as this is the first one. Does get secured there. Rocket kind of sniffs forward a little bit. Eminem is looking. Meanwhile, in the mid, Pretender's sitting right in the middle of a Chaos Storm and Mission trying to chase him down. He should be able to walk away from it, though.
Oh, the second explosion of the death ray doesn't land right there, and Mission is willing to play super aggressive. He knows that the Spirit Rush is down. And meanwhile, we do get a full charge onto the bottom side here.
Yeah, they're looking to open up first brick, I think.
Yeah, they could defend this quite easily.
They will. All the plates taken at least, but you know, that's kind of what you have to hope for at the least if you're CFO, try to get something back for that Herald. But the game's definitely swung in terms of tempo and gold as well. Frank with a 500 gold advantage off those skirmishes they managed to get for themselves, and he carries with the kills. Kurt going to have a much better game at this point, and Holo just completes the Divine Sunderer.
Oh boy, that's before 12 minutes Divine Sunderer. I feel like Rest is just a sitting duck here. Like, once Holo gets to the scene, Rest is just kind of dead, so he can't over push without getting vision into the jungle at this point.
They're pinging it.
The question is, the pinks are from Frank. I don't think Rest plans on doing much about this.
I think we got a dive coming. All right, they're gonna see this. Okay, back away.
Yeah,
but it's happening. Rest days are numbered.
Yeah, there's not much he can do in this lane. It's a very unfortunate scenario. He actually played his laning phase super well. It's just small fundamentals that allowed him to kind of outplay his opponent in this situation, get the extra backs in. He will be sitting on a mythic here, but like we've just seen, whenever Pretender roams top lane, there's not much you can do. I feel like CFO's strategy now has to shift towards Shun, and getting Shun just as massively fed ahead as possible.
He's a bit blind right now, and does use the Feather Storm, but nowhere to go. Isolated here. That's going to be the flash and hit into the cleanse, but Shun is walking away. Zenith Blade comes right back up. Full investment to get this Saya, and Eminem is going to claim that one up.
I love what K2 was doing right there. He was inching in and trying to detect where the vision actually was. You could see him in around the Tri-Brush area. He just walked forward a little bit, and he was paying attention to Shun if he would react. And once he saw that Shun didn't do anything, he knew that there wasn't vision. So it was kind of like using your own presence as a scryer to kind of detect if there was actually, if you were being spotted. And, you know, he was able to do the full loop around, lull Shun into a false sense of security, and they might be able to even take first break before rest in this one. Oh,
Meanwhile, in the mid lane, we got a spicy play here. In comes Koala, does get one knock up on this one. Kirk gonna be moved away, and just in time, the Gemini kick back, and everybody's hitting the ringers and the ropes as mission opens up onto Kurt, but they answer back onto Gemini right away. Rest is gonna be able to get first brick as Eminem is forced to back away. Does get a Gale Force for his troubles though, and woo! We've had some fights this day.
Yeah, I would say that this is a fairly even fight, but Pretender, once again, is just running away with the kills in this situation. Kurt, for them, doesn't matter as much. Kurt is just kind of you take your towers and you're fine. But CFO, in the meantime, they will take more immediate gold because of both of these side lane towers. FAK Esports, I'm sure that they wanted a little bit more out of that fight. They definitely were expecting to try and get at least 2 kills and snowball more off of this tower. But CFO were in position already to counter here. Really nicely done on the side of Gemini to make sure that Kurt wasn't going to escape that play. He also just disables the Hextech ultimatum by kicking Kurt outside of his own ultimate.
Yeah, it was a really nice move by Gemini. It still ends up being a 1-for-1 trade, but FAK Esports getting something out of it, even if it wasn't all that they wanted. Not being able to knock out any towers just yet, as the side lanes are open for CFO. So let's see what they can make do here, as you have Eminem and K2 on defense mode for the mid. Hollow coming in. Channeling on the Spectral Maw doesn't quite find anything here, as Shun and Koala are playing pretty safe.
A lot of abilities used right there. The ultimate even dropped here. And this is kind of the problem with your prior plays, is that Russ has a solid lead. Up. Ooh. That still does hurt quite a lot. He even dropped
Pretenders, he wants that kill. He's smelling it. Yeah, Rest has got to back up. Oh, the rocket. Hey, you know what, Eminem, you got to try. There have been so many cross-map rockets today. I respect it.
Kurt is in such an awkward spot because he just can't leave his lane at this point. So they have to swap Pretender into Rest. And because Kurt just died on the previous gank, I think he gave up most of his early game lead. So he's really far behind at this point. And Mission, you know, one thing about Mission's play is that he's very willing to split push on mages. So we could see a situation where I feel like FAK Esports, they need to be... They're going to be losing out on tempo on a lot of these trades just because it's 2 split push lanes versus 1.
Yeah, you can see it right there, an inner versus an outer. At least Frank gets some standing gold, but they lose out a lot of map control as well, as it's just a absolute Christmas tree worth of lights down there for CFO in FAK Esports jungle. Allows them to continue their Drake stack easily. Hollow can flip this on the Herald at least, but still, we got ourselves another Mountain Rift as well.
Yeah, so the dynamics in the early game is like, I feel like each team got what they wanted out, a fed Pretender, but Rest still in control of the side lane split push. So what this means basically is that CFO, they will continue to just play 4-1 completely. They have very good wave clear in the mid lane. So if they sit 4-man mid, I don't really see Frank having a good opportunity to engage on them because Camille is going to get tied up by Rest. I feel like if CFO just maintain their lane allocations, they can just easily shift this game into Baron stages of the game and force it into a straight-up 5v5, which FAK Esports don't really have a superior composition in that scenario. For FAK Esports, I need to see some picks going on to Restway. He cannot be allowed to split push and pin Kurt down. You have to kill him.
Well, Frank have got to know that they need to make a few moves here. Otherwise, they could just keep falling further behind. despite having a lot of kills early on in this game, they haven't really been able to control the tempo because CFO have just been a little bit better at it. Rest, decent lead for him. Pretty big CS lead as well, keeping that in mind out of this lane.
Yep. We had a lot of roams coming in from Kurt where he didn't find the assist, so naturally he will fall behind after the roams. And this is an interesting look by CFO. They're basically artificially creating a winning lane by just shadowing Lee Sin 24/7 around mission. And meantime, they already have a naturally winning one with Rest. Well, it should be completely fine here. But we are starting to go into those more 5v5 oriented scenarios. And unless Frank can find a good charm, I don't think the stun is enough. You really want the walk back effect from the charm in order to find those kills.
Yeah, that's going to be big. And if they can chain it, that's one thing. But you do see that Holo is definitely got that win condition on his mind. He's charging those up, not necessarily knowing that there's somebody right there. And then the moment anyone gets within sight, he goes for it. Spectrum Wall doesn't quite reach far enough, unfortunately, so he's not going to be able to find it. And yeah, I mean, this holding pattern favors CFO. They're perfectly happy to just keep farming up the side lanes. And Frank, they're going to get spotted on that ward. Good coverage here by CTBC Flying Oyster.
This is exactly what we need to see from Frank, but really good outplay here by Rest. He charges onto Kurt directly.
Holo taking a couple of tower shots, looks for the Heartbreaker, and oh no! He's got one! And they're gonna get two. Mission cleans it up. Oh, that was disastrous for Frank Esports. Pretender looking for an opportunistic snipe, completely whiffs the charm, and that'll be the end of that.
Rest just outplayed that so damn hard. Frank had the right idea there, but if you look at Rest, he's going for the full sustain, full side lane split push build. He has so much extra HP by dealing damage, by getting the Immortal Shield Bolt and the Bloodthirster Shield through that Frank just couldn't punch through. Like, they didn't even really need the Victor to come down. That was just a straight up 1v2 that Rest was able to handle.
Oh yeah. So, CFO very much in the driver's seat this game with a 4,000 or 3,500, I should say, gold lead. Controlling a lot of the jungle, lots of vision invested there for them. Let's see this replay again, because it starts with Rest going on to Kurt, but he takes it immediately with a level disadvantage, and then Holo just runs through tower range and goes for an early Heartbreaker, and Rest just blows him away.
Yeah, he needed to go in with the Heartbreaker just to get across the minions for the stun, but even when the stun landed, it wasn't enough. He was tanking tower shots, he was tanking minions, and just the build from Rest is extremely tanky. Like, he's getting true grit by starting the fight early there as well. Really smart move, a good understanding of Graves' mechanics to make that happen. He kites back to tower afterwards. He just plays that like a pro. It's a straight 1v2 outplay here, and he also just wastes the timing window for the Herald to actually take any effect from Frank Esports. So, as I was saying, top lane is the most important, and they really need to think about what to do with Rest. I think their answer is, hey, we can play 4-1 compositions and have Rest build solely for the side lane split push.
Yeah, and it's working out. Kurt will be able to finally take down the tower in the top, and look at this, CFO trying for a cheeky, sneaky Baron, I should say. With only 2 members, do they have enough damage to do it? They're really showing face. This is actually not been sniffed out by Frank. They have to know something is up by not seeing the jungler. The Spidey senses are tingling here. Gemini going to wrap out and around, but actually Rest is still doing it. Oh man, give these guys an Oscar for this performance.
Gemini acts like he's caught red-handed, but I feel like Frank have to know that something is up. There's no way that Gemini alone was taking the Baron. Okay, now they figure it out. This is going to be a full
down
turn.
to 4,000. Do they commit?
They have to.
No, they don't. No, they're out. They're out.
Oh, sorry. I meant Frank. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Very fair. I mean, that was almost brilliant, but they're going to get something for it all the same. Kurt, Hextech ultimatum, but will he be able to walk it out here? Body blocking, and ooh, so close, he limps away. I can't believe Frank didn't lose a man there.
Yeah, that was pretty aggressive from Shun as well, but also quite smart, because once they get the 5v4, this Drake is up for the taking, and they can force CFO into a definitive Dragon Soul fight before Kurt even gets the 3 items. Like, Camille, before she gets the 3 items, it's not really reaching her full potential.
No, not at all. Ooh, Eminem. Thanks to Laser. Frank now are the ones looking at Baron. They already spent a couple of teleports just to get into position, but this is pretty heavily telegraphed, and in fact, it's not even being started as they just look to secure vision. CFO aren't biting.
Nope. Yeah, they know this one isn't really going to go down, and to be honest, I think if you've seen Frank games, they typically do play in a very careful manner, so I wouldn't expect them to chance a 50-50. Like, if this was in the LPL, I'd say, oh, you have to have a word in there. Against Frank, I think it's okay.
Yeah. So CFO get completely unpunished for all of the shenanigans. They also managed to get almost a kill, and definitely 2 teleports and a dragon.
Mm.
So Drake stack is another thing that Frank have to keep in mind right now, is it'll be a 27 and a half minute soul that they have to fight for. Mountain Soul won't help their chances in this game if it's on the enemy team. Ooh, Charm almost connects, but Pretender is gonna get booted back. Let's see if he's got fancy enough feet to dodge the damage of the rest of this one. Koala looking for a chase. Gemini low, staying alive. I don't believe it. Rest is able to take down Holo. Holy moly.
Oh, such a beautiful outplay coming in from Gemini right there. He gets out of the Everfrost, gets the kick back in, forces the flash. Pretender survives, but Holo isn't so lucky as he tries to save the rest of the team. Now there's only 3 members around with no smite, so CFO take this one for sure. This is kind of crazy. Despite how good of a start Frank Esports actually got, I felt like they made a lot of mistakes and just not playing greedily enough for Kurt. Like, they should have hard focused Kurt, make sure that he could leave his lane whenever he wants to, make sure that he could win his lane. But they didn't do so. They actually just kind of fell for the tower trades that CFO lulled them in. We're going to watch this play again. Gemini, most critically, goes in with the Ward Hop before the Everfrost can even land. Takes a bit of seconds right there. Gets the slowdown and nearly jumps in for the kill as he also finds a second Q. Fortunately enough for Gemini, he also gets out because Rest Body blocks and Koala gets the knock up in.
Yeah, that was brilliant team play here, and Pretender, man, the moment he got Insect, I'm like, oh, he's a dead man. He somehow gets away from it, but only just. And CFO with the Baron on 5 cleanly here can just start to march down mid lane, push this one in. It's going to be hard for Frank to find a counter engage.
Yeah, Frank still do have another card to play, and that is their Jinx. She does have more range than the enemy AD carry on a consistent point with the fish bones right there, but she really needs to be at 3 items for that range advantage to actually be felt in most of these times, and Frank don't have the time. They have to go into the Mountain Soul sooner rather than later, as we do have it up in less than 2 minutes here. So we'll see if Eminem can critically get that Infinity Edge before he has to walk into the Drake pit.
Yeah, meanwhile, Rest is just pushing freely up topside, so this 4-1 is working wonders for CFO at the moment, and not a lot Frank can do. They haven't even really been able to peel CFO off this mid tower, and nobody's going to contest in the top. Backing away, oh, just a little bit of threat. You can see Pretender was getting completely zoned away. His charms were nowhere near landing, so they just lose both inners, and we're not done yet.
Yeah, no
Charm lands on Koala. Slow walk on this one. They don't find an answer. Gotta look for a pick. Shun slowed. That's it. That's all they got right now. This is looking dicey.
That was the last engage before Shun's flash even comes up. So I feel like CFO, they just maintain their position. And once Frank tried to charge at them, they'll likely win that fight and turn for the Dragon Soul.
Pretender and Holo just a little bit too low on the trade with Gemini. That's going to be the tower. Are they're just gonna lose out on an inhib here, and there's nothing they can do.
Frank, they actually need to pick their fights full back into full fight. They kind of thrown out ultimates piecemeal, and now they just put themselves into an ever worsening position. They just keep on giving things up. You really can't afford to do this.
Yeah, CFO just walk in and take both sides of the base. This is a free back. It'll turn into the Dragon Soul, and Frank need to fight. Otherwise, the game's just going to end. Infinity Edge does come up. Oh. This is the best chance they're going to have.
So what Frank needs to do in these situations is you need to make a big fight, and if you have surviving members, you're much closer to your own base, so you can still come back and defend. But if you just keep on taking steps back and you never try to put a front foot forward, then CFO will just take everything. So I'm a little bit disappointed. I feel like Frankie Sports play way too passively, and sometimes being too passive can actually hurt you greatly in these types of situations.
As we saw, Kurt getting zoned out by Rest right now. He's already down to half his health bar, and oh dear, Rest is chasing on the side. Can they actually turn it around? They do find a Hexacold to minimum. Look, and suddenly CFO just opened on the opposite side. It's all a misdirect, and Frank are losing health bars and losing members fast. Kurt and Holo have already fallen, and the Dragon was just a bait.
Rest doesn't need any cigar. He's still going to charge you down. Face plants into 2, doesn't matter. Has a sustain to cut through everything here. And there was an anti-heal coming on the build from Kurt here as CFO just charged down into the base. The draft was a little bit weird. The early game was super rough, but Rest simply outplays it all. He doesn't care. He's making a statement game here as the best top laner that we have in the PCS, and him alone can win you games.
And that has been proven true today. CFO take the win and give themselves a tie-break matchup for the 3rd seed in the PCS up against Deep Cross Gaming tomorrow. That will be our one and only tiebreaker, as with that loss, Frank will drop down into a locked 7th seed.
We do have our entire playoff bracket decided outside of CFO versus TCG. That'll be coming up tomorrow. Just once again, I feel like CFO, they have matured. They have found that, hey, maybe we cannot incorporate Rest into the rest of the team comp, but maybe that doesn't matter. We can still play around him through a remote fashion. Yeah. This team composition was just last pick for Rest, and the rest of the team, you just pick a lot of safe champions with a ton of wave clear and let Rest do his thing.
Yeah, I really liked the build. I mean, you talked about it a lot, but it gave him a lot of sustain. I think there needed to be so much more pressure on him up top. We did see Holo making trips up there, but not nearly enough. There was really good vision, and one thing CFO did incredibly well this game was just invest in wards and get them all over the map. Everywhere there was a fight, they put down a ward to commemorate it, and they just never got caught sleeping.
Yeah, true. I feel like Koala did a really good job this game as well. He blocked multiple engages by Pretender to try snowball the game even further. But the most critical play for me was definitely the Kurt engage in the mid lane, where they only traded 1-for-1 but lost both side lane towers. That was a huge loss of tempo. They weren't able to pressure Rest anymore off of that play, and the gold swing into Shun also meant that he could just safely wave clear throughout the rest of the game. And another huge play was the 2-man dive onto Rest. Rest just he basically just stands his ground and like executes them point blank with his massive shotgun.
I mean, yeah, clearly Frank didn't learn the lesson of like, you don't run into the guy with the big shotgun. I mean, that was a lot of damage on the collateral, and Holo had to tank a few tower shots. It was kind of a bit of a wonky setup too. Like again, the right idea, very wrong execution. Unfortunately, Frank still have a few kinks to work out. But they are still locked into playoffs. This new squad that had been cobbled together are going to get a chance to prove themselves. Unfortunately, they just have to do it from the loser side of the bracket.
Yeah, and coming into this split, we did have high expectations for Frank because they did have 2 carriers we thought pretty highly of. I would say that they ended up slightly below our expectations overall. I feel like they didn't get the boost they needed out of some of their lesser known players, especially from the top side. I feel like Kurt and Holo, they were about average, but not exactly as exceptional. So Frank, they do end up their first split in 7th place. They still do make playoffs though. Congratulations. And in the PCS, we have a saying, if you make playoffs, anything is possible.
That's true. So anything's possible for 8 out of the 10 teams, for sure. With the 7th seed, they will start and face off in that lower bracket up against the likes of, I believe it'll be
Impunity.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit later. Yeah. But for CFO, I mean, this is a big boost, right? Because they did have some struggles in this split. They were looking very dominant for a while. Things started to fall apart a little bit. They lost some games. Then they made the roster swap, and would you look at that? They've been looking very, very good with Shun in the roster because he complements the preferred play style for this team. And it hasn't just been about laning phase wins. I mean, this was some comeback mechanics, you have to say, after that early game, and now they get a chance to prove themselves against Deep Cross. I do really like that. It's going to be a fun rematch too, because these two teams have a 1-1 record. So there isn't, the gifted side selection on either side, and Gemini will earn the MVP. He was all over the place. I honestly think he had quite the Oscar-worthy performance at the Baron Pit, and for that alone, I think he earns this.
I'm still surprised that they actually got tricked on that Baron play, because there's no way that Gemini is actually doing Baron himself. Like, there has to be another suspect there at the scene, but they are able to get away with that. And honestly, Gemini, this game was just really terrific in keeping Rest alive. He shadowed him a lot of the times, made sure that he wasn't going to get ganked. The vision game was also on point. As a Lee Sin, you're naturally going to be dropping a lot more vision, but the degree to which they had the map lit up compared to their opponents was absolutely staggering. And we are going to be taking a look at today's results right here. So today was kind of expected. All of your top 5 teams did manage to win their respective games, and we do go into a scenario. MFT.
With one notable exception, yeah.
Yes, with one notable exception of MFT taking down Beyond Gaming. So congratulations to MFT, congratulations to Frank, making it into playoffs in their first split of PCS.
And with our final standings of the regular split, PSG Talon stand alone atop with the number 1 position. J-Team locked into number 2, so those 2 seeds are spent. But we do still have a question to answer: is which of the second J-Team squads is the stronger one? CFO and Deep Cross will face off tomorrow. Mega Bank Beyond Gaming, they're locked into that 5th, and yeah, this is our upcoming. We got one more game for y'all before the playoffs start and our week break in between. But I feel like this is going to be an interesting one, Clement. Any predictions based on what we saw today?
So I actually still favor DCG a little bit in this matchup, and I will explain my reasonings why. I feel like CFO have figured out that they're actually not a very good teamfight team. Their engages are super sus, and their positioning to defend is not very good. So they've settled on a 4-1 strategy. But guess who is the other top laner on the other side? It's Leaky. And honestly, Leaky is no Kurt. So he's statistically the best top laner we have in the PCS. And I may have sung the praises of Rest this split, but Leaky has been the one that has stolen the show in my eyes with his champion picks, with his coordination with Hana. And I actually think like DCG, despite all of their flaws and all of their wonky compositions, if they play a standard game, I still think their team fight looks a little bit better than the side coming out from CFO. So I'm going to come up with a bold prediction, and I feel like DCG is still going to end up as our 3rd seed.
All right. I think it could be very interesting. I think those matchups are going to be a lot of fun. The top lane looks fantastic, but we're going to have to wait one day to see the results. Thank you all so much for watching. We got one tie break and then a break till playoffs, but for now, signing off in the PCS. See you next time.